Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mike Beach. As Alicia mentioned, I am the head of customer experience operations at WorkSoft. And today we'll talk about S/4HANA and how we are able to use the WorkSoft platform for seamlessly connecting from process intelligence all the way through test automation and robotic process automation, how all that can be applied to your S/4HANA journey. So as we heard in the poll, there are a number of different stages that we're all in terms of the S/4HANA migration. Certainly what everyone understands is that this is a significant undertaking, right? It's a complex process, and it can be fraught with risk. And as we go through that, we want to make sure that we're able to not only minimize and mitigate risk, we also want to be able to accelerate the pace at which we're able to do our S/4HANA migration. And we know that we're always under pressure to be able to get things done faster and more efficiently. So what we're going to focus on is how we can use automation to help us make it through that migration without getting lost along the way. So today we'll talk about just setting the context for a typical company's S/4HANA migration. What are the challenges that most companies are faced with as they're going through this? We'll look at how they prioritize their migrations. And then we'll look at some of the different approaches to the S/4HANA migration. Then we'll look at that step-by-step enablement of your migration through the use of automation. And we're really going to look at how it does apply across the entirety of that process of going from your current systems through to S/4HANA. And then we'll talk about how we're able to accelerate that with automation as well. And finally, we'll look at some customer examples, and we'll look at some demos of the WorkSoft platform and how it can be applied. And then finally, if we have time, we'll wrap up with some Q&A. So the challenges. I don't think most of us really need to be told what our challenges are, right? I think we all know currently today, not just small companies, large companies, everyone's being faced with having to do things faster, more innovatively. Think about the impact that COVID has had on companies. We're having to have new ways of working, remote workforces, but timelines, objectives still remain. And so companies are having to face these challenges and still innovate faster, working in different ways, still mitigating the risks that they encounter as we go through these kinds of migrations, especially if you're going from highly customized, homegrown built systems to migrating to things like SaaS applications. A lot of change there, risk throughout that process. At the same time, we're going through changes in the way we deliver, going from old waterfall approaches to much more modern, agile, DevOps types of approaches. And at the same time, we've all been spoiled by our iPhones and our Android phones. We're all used to these very, very user-intuitive, very rich experiences through apps. And that is translating into the applications that we employ in the workplace. So all of this is being pushed, right? And at the same time, we're trying to meet all of these different objectives simultaneously. And if you're trying to do that, it's very, very difficult, perhaps impossible to do it all if you're just doing it manually. You really have to employ automation to make that possible. In terms of where companies are in prioritizing their migrations to S/4HANA, SAP Insider does an SAP benchmark report. They've done that for the last 3 years. And we're seeing, the numbers are definitely trending upwards. In 2019, the report indicated that 8% of people had adopted S/4HANA. And, you can think of, it could be various ways of adopting, right? It could be a single module. But there's been very steady growth in that. And in the current benchmark study, we found that there are 24% of SAP customers who have completed their S/4HANA migration. So that moved from 8% to 24%, very steady increase. And what we're seeing now is that in addition to the 24% that have made migration, about half. The remaining half are all either in the process of evaluating the business case for it, or they are in the process of implementing S/4HANA. So it's definitely, we all know it's definitely happening. That same benchmark report tells us that nearly 90% of customers say that there is the need to minimize disruption to the business is paramount, right? You have to be able to take orders. You have to be able to ship product. You have to be able to invoice and pay invoices. So that overall, right, that minimizing the potential for negative impacts to your business operations, very, very important. So you have that as a high priority. At the same time, what we hear from an ASUG study is that about 40% of customers underestimated the complexity of the migration. So we have all of these pressures in terms of how we need to get work done, in terms of prioritizing this migration along with everything else. This is a very important migration. It can't go wrong, can't impact business, and we still underestimate how complex it is. So what we're going to talk about is how we can then start to use automation to mitigate and to assist us in that migration process. So when we're looking at the WorkSoft platform, our Connective Automation platform spans all phases, right? As we go from discovery into the planning, the explore phase of a project, going into the realization, building out the project, or building out the application, and then taking it into run, right? Going live, taking it into production operations. Our platform spans the entirety of that journey. And we look at different capabilities that can be employed through automation. So in discovery, we're able to apply process discovery and process mining to understand what the processes are today and how the business actually operates. Taking that, we can then apply impact analysis, and we can build out a change roadmap that helps us understand what needs to be done and prioritize that work. We can then use process intelligence and process optimization as we explore the current state and look at the new state in S/4HANA and begin to evaluate what are the high priority processes. What do we want to change our business to? What do we want to keep? What do we want to maybe delete from the way that we used to work? And then building that into the realization. So actually taking now what we want to do, making that a reality, and then taking it into run. So all along the way, we have components of the platform that can apply. And this really allows automation to reduce your risk and reducing manual effort, not just for testers, but for different roles and personas in your project. Business people also assists in helping out understanding how we can apply automation to project planning. So understanding where can we take advantage of automation to perhaps shorten time spans and reduce the number of people required to actually do the work. So this can really be applied before, during, and after. So let's just take a look at what is it we're seeing today. When we talk with our customers, we're finding that we've talked in the past about greenfield versus brownfield being really kind of the two approaches. Back in the 2015, 2016 timeframe, that was really how most businesses looked at it, was one of those approaches. What we're seeing now, really with a lot of our customers, is that they're taking more of this lift and shift approach. So we have customers who are taking advantage of S/4HANA in the cloud capabilities. They're actually migrating their platforms to the cloud and then undergoing some of the transformation into S/4HANA. So what we're seeing is a lot more of the piecemeal approach. We do still see customers who are doing complete greenfield. A lot of customers who do greenfield, we do see greenfield with that are actually really re-implementations, right? They have an existing ECC system, and rather than migrating it, they're going to just do a re-implementation in S/4HANA. So it is greenfield. What I'm saying is really it's more of a blurred line. It's not quite as clear cut as it used to be. But regardless of whichever approach you're going, automation can benefit you. So if you're doing the lift and shift approach, you've got an existing ECC application, you can use automation today to capture and document and create automation for your existing SAP ECC processes in the GUI. And you can then build out those test automations for it and then reuse that when you go into your S/4HANA project. We're actually going to talk about Ariel Corporation here shortly and how they took this approach in using the WorkSoft platform. If you're in the Greenfield approach, you can also capture the processes that are around SAP, around your existing applications, whether that's ECC or non-SAP. In both approaches, lift and shift and Greenfield, you can capture the processes that occur around SAP. So SAP doesn't exist in a vacuum. There are upstream and downstream applications, and business processes typically span multiple applications. So if we think about it from that standpoint, and we're talking about that one important point of minimizing disruption to business operations, you can begin before your S/4HANA journey, and you can start building automation in the applications around SAP, start building out those end-to-end business processes. So when you implement SAP S/4HANA, right, you already have the upstream and downstream components built. So there's a lot of value that you can get. You think about how integration testing, right, typically very complex, building out all the interfaces. Taking this approach before you actually get started can give you a real leg up in your S/4HANA journey. So the Connective Automation platform, I've already mentioned it. What is it? It is a platform that connects across all the different phases of your business process lifecycle. So our platform really addresses one of the more complex and difficult components of the business process, which is just understanding, what do we do today? What is the current business process? So with the platform, we're able to actually dive in and understand the business processes that are in place. We are able to do that using automation and then take those assets that we create during that process understanding and build out test automation, right? So the assurance that your business processes are going to continue, that they're not going to fail. So being able to build that out, once we've got those assets built out and we're using that to assure that we're not introducing disruption into the business, we can also repurpose those for the purposes of robotic process automation. So being able to use test assets converted for really production operations and being able to use that to accomplish digital worker tasks, right? And be able to remove some of the more manual, repetitive effort from the users and allow them to focus on things that are much higher value. So underpinning those in this closed loop approach, right? We have process intelligence, gives us the ability to do things such as process capture, process mining, being able to automatically generate documentation about our processes. We can take that, as I said, what we create there then feeds into our test automation, which allows us to do end-to-end testing across applications, right? We're able to do lights out testing at scale, doing continuous test executions at a very large scale, hundreds or thousands of test steps, hundreds of thousands of test steps, right, on a nightly basis. Being able to do this in the cloud, across mobile, across all kinds of different platforms. And then, as I said, then taking that into production, using those as RPA assets. So really maximizing the value of the assets that you've already built out and being able to leverage that and use that in production, along with all of the orchestration that's required, as well as the security and the audit, right? Once we have that in the business, in the operations, we're actually able to feed that data back into our process intelligence. So we're able to continuously see how is the business operating. So think about how we would typically do this in the past. It would be very much kind of a one-time process of evaluating how does the business operate today. With process intelligence, we're now actually able to make this part of the way the business operates and make this an ongoing process. So as I mentioned, we're able to apply automation in the discover phase. So in discover, we have process intelligence, and process intelligence really comprises, as I said, process capture, the process discovery. It allows us to understand business processes, as I said, that span multiple applications, that may span multiple platforms. Can be anything from a mobile device, can be web applications, custom homegrown applications in .NET or Java, right? All the way back to the traditional mainframes that so many companies still have and that are still critical to business operations. We're able to capture and understand the processes that exist across those. So let's talk about one customer who used the WorkSoft platform in the discover phase, and that's Ariel Corporation. So Ariel Corporation used our process capture capability along with our process automation, test automation capability to facilitate their migration and really to accelerate their migration from ECC to S/4HANA. And the way they did that was they actually brought in college students, co-op students who came in, and they hired them, and they had business processes, documented business processes that they used our process capture capability, walked through them, documented, captured the processes in their SAP ECC GUI, and then they took that and they built out test scripts. So they started this journey early. They began capturing these processes and built all of this out with two purposes. One, they were able to use it for test automation in ECC. And then secondly, they were able to use those tests that they had built against ECC and run those against their S/4HANA system. So if you have tests in the GUI, the GUI is not going away. You'll be able to still run those same tests against the GUI in S/4HANA. They'll require some changes potentially, but much less than actually going through and building things from scratch. So what Ariel Corporation found was they were able to use people who really didn't even have a whole lot of knowledge of the business process, but were able to take documentation and go out, capture that, build out a library of process captures, turn that into test automation in ECC. And then when they applied that in their S/4HANA transformation, they had an original go live date that they planned. They found they were actually able to move that go live date ahead by 2 months and reduce their test automation by about 2/3. So the effort that it took, they were able to apply that, and that really accelerated the entire project. So if you think about that, how can automation assist you? Think about the time and money savings if you're able to accelerate that project by 2 months, not just the testing, but the overall project. So I think the fact that they talked about how they were able to leverage this as a long-term was really a significant gain for them. So we talked about how we apply automation in the discover phase. When we get into planning, right, we understand what our processes are. We need to start planning out how do we go forward with this. We are partners with Panaya, and we're able to leverage Panaya's change intelligence, which allows a customer to upload metadata about their SAP ECC system. And Panaya then does an analysis of the metadata, identifies all of the objects and processes that will be affected by the migration to S/4HANA. So they use this intelligence engine to identify everything that's going to be affected. And then within 48 hours, they're able to turn around a plan that identifies everything that's going to be affected and lays out a plan for the objects and remediation that needs to occur. So all of that, then you can then apply test automation as you're making those updates, right? You can apply the test automation to test out these changes, these impacts that you know are going to be coming. You're able to very rapidly build out automation to test that out. Again, going back to the idea about not minimizing disruption to business operations. So in terms of what kind of benefits do customers see, typically it's a very large reduction in the the scope of the effort. They're able to do faster testing and minimize the risk of that S/4HANA migration. So discover, plan, when we get into the explore phase, right? This is again where we're able to leverage the power of process intelligence. So with the process intelligence component of our platform, we're able to ingest data from multiple sources. Those can be process captures using our process capture capability. It can be process mining, right? Being able to bring in system data, system log information, pulling in information even from production, right? If we have production processes, RPA, we can pull that data in, any sort of automation libraries. All of these different sources of information can be combined along with financial information, cost information, and give you the ability to see all the variations in your processes, as well as start being able to align dollar impacts to what value can we get if we automate this process. So in the process intelligence, one of the things you're able to see is just a very nice visual dashboard of the benefits that can be gained through process automation. You're able to see what's been automated, the value that you're receiving from that. So really being able to tie these efforts as you think you're going through an S/4HANA migration. We have lots of existing business processes today. Very difficult typically to understand all the variations in your process. With this capability, we're able to bring that information together and visualize it and allow you to see what are the variations in the processes. So as you're going to S/4HANA, if you're thinking about standardizing, right, this gives you a great information so you can see not just the variation in the process, but also potentially where can we start to optimize. So rather than carrying legacy baggage into S/4HANA, what are possibly some things that we can eliminate or that we can streamline? So all of that, being able to visualize that and to tie dollars to it, I think is very, very valuable. So another customer, so talking about, as we go forward into the realization phase, Carrier Global has been a long-time customer of ours. And they've been using our test automation platform for a number of years. And I really like this chart because they show what their efforts had been before they introduced automation and then after. And I think the really interesting thing is if you look at the number of man days spent, right? They found that when they had about 70% of their tests automated, the total number of man days required to do the testing dropped by about 75%. So there are a number of benefits to that, right? One, it requires fewer resources to perform that testing. And also, it allows you to shorten the time that's required for testing. So with this ability to do automated testing at scale, we're able to do more iterations of testing. So if you think sometimes you realize we might need to do an additional round of, say, integration testing, or maybe we need to do some other types of testing, right, that we hadn't intended or anticipated. If you're able to just spin this up and do mass testing in a batch style, right, that's automated, you don't have to staff up additional people. So it really gives you a greater degree of flexibility in your project, in addition to shortening the timeframes. And one of the things that Carrier found was that in doing their testing, they didn't keep it strictly to SAP, right? So the approach that I talked about before of having upstream and downstream applications and a business process spanning all of those applications, including SAP, it's one of the things that they talked about is the ability to do that with the WorkSoft platform. And I really like the quote from our Judy Zeman, where she said that, if you're thinking about going to the cloud, right, you really need automation because you can't tell SAP, right, we need an additional week. SAP is going to go live with an update, whether you're ready or not, right? So it really does become critical that you employ automation to be able to keep up with the frequency of updates that you'll see. Okay, I've talked a lot about the capabilities of the platform. So let's actually spend a moment and look at how that actually works out. So what you see here is we have a traditional SAP GUI running in the classic theme, and we're just entering a sales order here. On the right-hand side, you'll see that we have WorkSoft's process capture. And we've turned on process capture, and as you'll watch, you'll see that we are just simply walking through a business process, entering data. And as we're doing that, capture is capturing the data that we're entering, is capturing the objects that we're interacting with on the screen, all the clicks, right? Anywhere that we're clicking, entering data, click on check boxes, all that gets captured. And you notice it's building out a nice English language narrative that tells exactly what is being done as we go. So here we've gone through, we've entered an order. And at this point, if we're going to be doing testing, let's say for audit purposes, we need to have proof that there was a successful operation, right? Successfully created an order. So here what we've done is we've simply done a screen capture. At the same time, we're also able to capture the message that's in the SAP GUI status or message bar. And from that, then we're able to capture what was the order number. So we've paused the process capture. We've gone from the GUI and the classic theme now into a web, right? Fiori order delivery. And we're simply entering the information here. And again, you'll notice that process capture, again, is building out that English language narrative. So the key point here is employing automation across different personas in your project. If you think about capturing and understanding your current business processes, traditionally that has required you to bring in frequently, consultants or additional people to document, to take screenshots, to take notes, to sit and interview the business people, right? And then go write up narratives of this is how the process works, do this, do this. If you look at what we're able to do here, we can actually capture all of that without having to apply any additional resources. We simply use the process capture, and we now have a high quality, high definition capture and understanding of the business process as it was executed. So once we've done that, we can then take that, we've saved that capture, right? So now we've uploaded that capture into process intelligence. So here you see the process intelligence dashboard, and you're able to see by different departments, we're able to see where we have different, for example, different variants of a process. And as yet, right, we haven't quite automated anything yet, but we can see that we have potential of potentially millions of dollars in savings that can be gained by applying automation. What we're looking at here is our ability to visualize a process. So here you'll see an example of an order to cash process, right? In here, we're looking simply at a single process variant, but the capability in process intelligence is that you can visualize multiple variants of a process, either based on the frequency or on the duration of the process, really starting to give you insight into what is actually happening in the business, right? Because it's often frequently different from what people believe. And here we're able to see as well the sources of that information. So I talked about being able to combine data from captures and from process mining. So here, now we're going in, that capture that we created, we've uploaded that capture into process intelligence. So we see that at the bottom, that create sales documents capture. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create documentation. So where we've had someone, a business user, or say a functional specialist, did the process capture, right? We've uploaded that, and now we have created documentation of that process. At the same time, we're able to create automation. So from that one capture, we're now able to really start to leverage that into additional information, right? Now we have a narrative, right? A very high quality, high definition capture and rendering of the business process in a document that can then be shared with for example, a test automation team, right? Along with that, you're then able to share the process automation itself with that team, who can then turn that into automation that can be used for testing in ECC as well as in S/4HANA. So continuing on, here we have that order, right, that we captured that was in the SAP GUI in the classic theme. So we've taken that, we've done a little bit of work on it to handle to pass some information, pass data from one process to the next. And here what we're simply doing is just executing the process. So what we had done before has now just been captured and executed as a process. And we're running that against the classic GUI. And you can see at the bottom, it's again capturing that information about the order, it's capturing the status, and it's capturing the order number. And then we are moving seamlessly into the continuation of that process in Fiori, right? And so here again, capturing the same information. So we see that we executed a process that spanned the classic GUI and Fiori, 36 test steps in about 34 seconds. So very rapidly able to execute that test. And what you see is when we do that test execution, we can capture the images. And as I said, for audit purposes, if you need to have proof, right, we have the proof here that an order was successfully saved, and we've captured that order number. Now, I talked about being able to use your ECC, right, your GUI classic automation, being able to leverage that forward into S/4HANA. So as I said, the GUI isn't going away. And so if you think about your migration to S/4HANA, if you build out automation in the GUI, whether you're using the classic GUI theme, whatever the theme is, right? But in your ECC system, if you build that automation out today, that is still valuable when you move to S/4HANA. And as I said, that's exactly what Ariel Corporation did. So just showing you as an example here, right? All we've done is, no smoke and mirrors. We've just changed up the GUI theme here to be in the Blue Crystal Fiori theme, right? Looks very different, looks much like, almost exactly like a Fiori web page. And without making any changes to the test itself, we're able to execute that exact same test against this theme of the GUI and execute this, right? So if you think about it, that's what, as I said, Ariel Corporation did, and they were able to do this and really save a lot of time in testing out their business process. So business process, right? We're all about making sure that the business process operates correctly, and that's the real focus. And so, you can also use this later on if you want to build out additional Fiori automation to test out the user experience. You can do that as well. But in terms of thinking about how you approach your S4 project, as you go through and you want to first confirm, do the business processes work, right? Are they correct? The ability to take that automation that you built perhaps years ago in the GUI and still leverage that into your S4HANA really can help facilitate and accelerate your project. Okay, so we're in the realize phase, and you are getting ready to go live. Now that you've gone live, right? Now you have to change. So we all know change is inevitable, right? There are always going to be changes to the business process, not just once you go live, but also throughout the project, right? You're always applying transports and making changes. So as you go through, the ability to do thorough testing is very important, and being able to do that rapidly is very important. So WorkSoft Impact does analysis of ABAP transports, and is able to identify all of the corresponding affected user interface components, whether that's in the traditional GUI or if that's in Fiori. And that really includes all the different components of Fiori, whether it's UI5, WebDynpro, or Web GUI applications. We're able to correlate the changes in the transport to the objects in SAP, and then correlate that to the corresponding certified tests. And then from there, we're able to propose a test set that can be used in continuous test execution. So if you think about your weekly change control boards, right? Or as you're going through your project and you're moving things, from your QA to, or from dev to QA to prod, the ability to be able to have proof that you've thoroughly tested and being able to do that in an automated way, not requiring a developer or a tester to sit down and do that testing, but instead just apply automation to be able to run that. It's very, very valuable and helps with reducing the amount of time required. So once we're in production, right, we have our object action framework that is really one of the core components that allows us to simplify and accelerate the ability to make changes. So instead of having to code any changes to objects or changes to your automation, the WorkSoft platform is completely codeless. So we're able to leverage this object action framework as your application changes, as the process changes, as objects in the user interface change. We're able to very rapidly apply updates to all the processes that use those objects. So fix the object in one place, and then it's applied everywhere. So again, very easily able to rapidly adapt to changes in the business process or to changes in the application. Okay, so who is WorkSoft? We are the SAP test automation experts. We've been in this space for a number of years, right? And we work with the largest of companies. So if you look at companies across the world, 67% of the Fortune 50 customers use WorkSoft. So our customers include names that you all know. The largest 10 organizations using SAP, all of them use WorkSoft. So our platform spans, as I said, from process intelligence all the way through to testing and then into robotic process automation. So as I said, once we've taken those assets, we're able to take what we learned in the process intelligence about our applications and about our business processes and leverage that all the way through into being able to build out automated assets that can run in your production environment. And that is regardless of industry or vertical, right? We have customers across all of the industries, verticals that you're familiar with. Just a couple of comments from some customers. I like this one from Chep. They said, if you're doing something in SAP, WorkSoft's already done it so many times that we are the gold standard for automating SAP. Another here about, we're not just for ERP applications, right? Deutsche Telekom sees that we are strong not just in the SAP environment, but we actually span multiple platforms, working with all the different enterprise applications, SaaS applications, so that whatever it is that's involved in your end-to-end business process, we're able to automate that. And who do we do that for? Our customers include, as I said, right, names that you all know. If you look, we have a very large list of customers, very leading global enterprises, including SAP. And SAP is a customer of WorkSoft. So SAP internal, SAP IT uses WorkSoft to test their applications, their IT internally. And they've spoken for us or with us at a number of events. I think the numbers speak for themselves, right? They found that they were able to save 95% of their time by using WorkSoft for test automation and reducing their test cycles by 93%. So some some real world numbers from SAP themselves. So as I said, we're able to use the WorkSoft platform, the Connective Automation platform, before, during, and after your S/4HANA migration. So again, my advice would be if you're in the process of considering moving to S/4HANA, really consider the fact that getting started now with automation is going to benefit you when you get into your S/4HANA migration. You'll be building up an organizational competence as well. In addition to building out the assets, you'll also have that knowledge base and that skill set in doing automation that you'll be able to leverage and really take advantage of when you move to S/4HANA.